base, 2 lines from the top, Itmar. Continue on with the discussion of Tuma B'tzibur. Itmar hayu shlishi sons. If a third of the tzibur were zovid, they were tamei with Tuma Ziva, ushlishi sons taharim, and a third of them were taharim, ushlishi sons tamei mason, and the final third were tamei mason. Oma Rabbi Mani Bar Patish Aisan Tamei Mason. Those who are tamei mason, Eina Aisan Loyas Rishon v'Loyas Sheni. They can't do Pesach Rishon. They can't do Pesach Sheni either. Berishon Loyav, they can't do Pesach Rishon because they deal with Zovan al Tahirim. They love the Betuma. You combine, you add on the Zovan to those who are Tahirim, which are both groups that cannot do Betuma. The Tahirim are Tar, and so they don't do it Betuma. The Zovan, even though they're Tamei, but as far as Tuma B'tzibur is concerned, their type of Tuma is not doicha the halacha that a korban has to be brought b'tar. So they're not added to the group of Tmeim to say that you have Roy Tzibur who are Tmeim and therefore the korban can be done b'tuma, because Zovan aren't counted in the group that are Tmeim, that are doicha the Isser of Tuma that with avoida with korbanos. So therefore they're combined to the group of the Tahir. So we look at the tzibur as being a miut. There's only a miut of the tzibur who's tamei with a tuma of tumas mes, a tuma which is doicha the iser of hakrova betuma, and therefore it's like a case where you have roiv the tzibur which are not doicha tuma, you have the miut of tzibur which therefore are tamei, which have to be pushed off to Pesach Sheni. So like Tmei Mesa Miyuta will have the Rishon, and the Tmei Mesa Miyuta can't do Pesach Rishon. But B'Sheni lo yavdi, but they can't do Pesach Sheni either because Nitzru Zovin im Tmei Mesa do lo yav Rishon, because you combine the Zovin with Tmei Mesa, which don't do it a Rishon, and have a Ruba le Amidcha Pesach Sheni. And therefore you have a right tzibur. Now if the Zovim become Tor, you have a right tzibur, the majority of the tzibur, who therefore did not do Pesach Rishon, and now would be attempting to do Pesach Sheni. We say Pesach Sheni is only for Yechidim. You can't do Pesach Sheni for Raiv of tzibur. So therefore they can't do it but Pesach Sheni either. As the Malay Rim explains, it's not only of course, the Tmei Mesim that can't do Pesach Sheni, it's the Zovim also that can't do it. So why does the Gemara put an emphasis and say that the Tmei Mesim don't do Berishon Sheni? The Gemara says that Tmei Mesim ain't Zolais Rishon Zolais Sheni. Why not the Zovim? Why does it make a point of specifically saying the Tmei Mesim? He says because the Tmei Mesim are the ones that usually that if they don't do Pesach Sheni, they do Pesach Rishon. They're the ones that if Tmei Mesim, if they don't do Pesach Sheni, if you say meaning that they would do Pesach Rishon because Tuma Hutra D'chuya B'tzibur. The Sovian are never counted in the ones that are Doicha, that we say Tuma is Hutra D'chuya B'tzibur. But Tmei Mesim are, so that's the bigger Chiddush. But in fact, neither of them can do Pesach Rishon or Pesach Sheni. Zok the Mishnah, Pesach Shenizrak Dama, the Korban Pesach, the Zrikas Adam, V'akach Noideshu Tomei. And afterwards it was discovered that the Dam was Tomei. Rashi says the Dam or the Basra, that either one are Tomei. Then it's Maratza. The Tzitz is Maratza. The Korban is kosher, and therefore the person is not Nitche, the Baal is not Nitche to Pesach Sheni. He's Yaitza and he's not Nitcha the Pesach Sheni. Taisus argues on Rashi. He says that only Rabbi Lezer holds that if Nitma the Basa, that the Korban is kosher and it's in the Ratza, and we don't pass on like Rabbi Lezer, so he says we're talking only the Dam, not if the Basa is Tomei. So therefore we say that the person, the bottom is Yaitza, he is not Nitcha Pesach Sheni. Nitma Guf, but if the owner himself, the Baal himself became Tomei, if the person became Tomei, and it's Maratza. That's it, it's not Maratza. Mipnei Shamru, Hanozer voice of Pesach, Atzitz Maratza al Tumas Adam, then Atzitz Maratza al Tumas Guf. Because by these cases we say Atzitz Maratza, but that's only for the Dam, not for the Guf. not for the body, for the person himself. So therefore, in the case of the Korban Pesach, then the Baal will have to do a Pesach Sheni. And in the case of the Nazir, there we say that it's not Maratza, and he says there is Nazirus, and he has to start again. So why do we pick Dafka these cases? The Tzitzis Maratza on the Tumah for other Korbanos as well. Why does it say Dafka Nazir Vayse Pesach? Rashi in Zvachim says because over there the Tumah, if the person is Tumah over there, then he's not Yetzer. Because on a Korban Pesach he has to be able to eat the Basar. And by a Nazir, it's only if he's Tahor that he can complete his Nazirus and bring his Korbanos. So it picks these cases and says that nevertheless, even in these cases, the tzitz is maratza not on the goof, but it's maratza on the korban. Nitma tumasatahoim, if the person became tameh with the tumasatahoim, meaning a tumah that was not known to people. So we'll see in the Gemara the precise definition of it, but it's a tumah that nobody knew about. So it was under the depths. There was something that was buried under the depths. There's mashmos and Rashi that's mashma that nobody knew for certain. Nobody knew certain of the certainty of the tumah. They may have known of the sofek, but not of the certainty. But we'll define this more clearly. But in general terms, it's a tumah that it's not known to people. It's under the depths, and there's a halach l'Moshe Mitzinai that in such a case, that even if it's the bailim, even if it's the owner, but it's a tumah hasatayim, then it's tumah hasatayim, that's it's maratza. Then the tzitz is maratza for that type of tumah. So zak the Gemara taima, then is why is it maratza that if there was first a zarika and the awareness of the tumah came only after the fact? But if it was known about the tumah and then they did the zrika stam, then the tzitz is not maratza. Very minas yasira al mahatzitz maratza. What's the maratza adam? And all of these things, if they're in nitma, bein b'shegeg, bein b'mezid, bein b'inus, bein b'rotzain. If it became tameh, whether it's inus or whether it's shegeg mezid, inus or rotzain, it's maratza. Bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur, whether it's a yachid or a tzibur. So you see that even if it is b'mezid, so l'cher mezid means they knew about it and then they did the zrikas adam. Amar Avina to Mosa bein b'shegeg bein b'mezid. He said what it means mezid, that there was an awareness, they knew about it. If the tumah was done caused b'mezid, that's bein b'shegeg bein b'mezid. Even if the korban became tameh b'mezid, they deliberately made the korban tameh, then it's marasa. But zrikosai, the zrika b'shegeg hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza. But the zrika zadam, it's only if the zrika was done b'shegeg but not b'mezid. If they knew it was tameh and they did the zrika b'mezid, then he says it's not maratza. Rabbi Shilo Amar, he says zrikasa, the zrikas bein b'shegeg bein b'mezid hurtza. He said the zrika, even if it's b'mezid, even if they knew it was tameh, then it can be done. If it's done b'mezid, it's still hurtza. Tumasa, however, if it became tameh, tumasa b'shegeg hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza. If it became tameh b'mezid, then that is. If it became tameh b'mezid, then it's loy hurtza. Taisus in Yevamos explains that really midaraisa, so there's no chilik. It's a din exer the rabbanan, and the question is where the rabbanan, where the guys are more on the becoming, it's becoming tameh, or on the zrika. So it says bein b'shegeg b'mezid. It's according to Rashila. How are we going to explain it? Nitma b'shegeg. If it became tameh b'shegeg uzraka and he did the zrika bein b'shegeg bein b'mezid, if it became the tumah, the tumah's b'shegeg, and if he did the zrika, even if he did the zrika b'mezid, but the shegeg b'mezid, then it's hurtza. That it says in the Mishnah, Dam Shenizrak V'Achakach Noida. It says they did the zrika, and afterwards they became aware of it. So how Rav Shlia explained this? Because it's mashma time in the nizak v'akach noida. It's only because first there was a zrika, and then they were aware. Aval noida v'akach nizak loim. Or it says who it did nafilo noida v'akach nizak. No, the same din will apply if it's noida v'akach nizak. V'hadik tani nizak v'akach noida. Why does it say first Zarika, and then they became aware? Mishum the Bible is the Sefer Nitma Guf, and it's Maratza, because the Sefer says Nitma Guf is not Maratza. Dafilun Nizrak V'Akach Noida Loi, which means to say that even if they did the Zrika and only became afterwards aware that the person became Tomei. Now in this case, since it's talking about the Tumah of the Bible, the Tumah of the Guf, over here it wants it that you should make this diuk that as far as the Bailam are concerned, that even if it was after the fact that they became aware after the Zrika, it's still lawyered. So therefore, that's why it says in the Reisha also that first there was a Zrika and they were noida. But in fact, he holds, even if they were in the Reisha aware first about the Tumah and then they did the Zrika, even though they knew that the korban was Tomei, in the range it would be Hurtza. Nitma Tumas Tahim, but if the Bailam became Tomei with a Tumas Tahim, with an unknown Tumah, then the tzitz is Maratza. Boy, Rami Bar Chami had the following Shani Kain Maratza Bekarban Hussein. What about the Kain? What about the Kain who does the Avodah? What do we say by him? Do we say, just like by the Bailam, do we say it's Hurtza or not? Do we say Hutulai Tumas Tahim or Eloi? Or not? Do we say this halach we've seen that we had by Tumas Tahim beBailim? It's Dafke beBailim. It's only by the Bailim bekain Eloi Gemir, but not by the kain who's doing the avodah. Oidilma bezivcha Gemir, or perhaps that we learn out by the korban and Loishna bekain, Loishna beBailim, and therefore it makes no difference if it's the kain or the Bailim. Omerova Tashma, let's bring a raya from the following, the Tani Rabbi Chia. Lo Yamru Tumas HaToim Elul Meis Balvat. They didn't say the case of Tumas Toim, it was only for the case of a Tumas Meis. So it's coming to exclude a different type of Tumah. Meis Lemute Mai. What is that coming to exclude? Lav Lemute Tumas Toim Sheretz. Isn't that coming to exclude the Tumas HaToim, the uncertain, the unknown, rather, Tumah of a Sheretz? And what are we talking about? In what case are we talking about? Name of a Bailam, if it's a question of the Bailam becoming Tomei with the Tumah of Sheretz of a man. In which case are we talking about? Ibn Nazir, if we're talking about a Nazir, Mimahani Bey, does Tumas Sheretz affect the Nazir, the completion of the Nazirs? It doesn't affect the Nazirs anyway. By Nazir it says, Ki Yomas Meis Allah Amar Rahman. It says, if there's a mace, if it comes to with Tumas Meis, then it nullifies his Nazirs, but Tumas Sheretz doesn't affect it. So it can't be in reference to a Nazir. Ella, you must say, by Pesach. It's talking about a person who is making a Korban Pesach. So then you can say it's relevant to a case according to the Mandamar, who says that you don't shecht and zerek the Korban Pesach for someone who's told me Tumas Sheretz. Someone who's told me the Tumas Sheretz, it's only a tumah for that day. By the nighttime he'll be tar. So there is one Mandamar who says, well, since by the nighttime he'll be tar and he'll be able to eat the Korban Pesach, even though right now he's tomei, we can shecht and do the zrika on his behalf, and because he is considered to be part of the korban and he can eat the korban, so we can bring the korban on his behalf. So if you say according to the Mandamar that no, ein sheich in v'zarkim Tumas Sheretz, then Tumas Sheretz is relevant, and therefore currently he cannot bring the Korban Pesach, and you might say that if it's a Tumas Tahim, then we consider him to be Torah, and therefore that would allow it. Kamash Malan, that we don't. But the Man Damar says that in any event we can bring the Korban Pesach, we can shech and do the zrik on behalf of someone that's Tomei Sheretz, because he'll be Torah by the nighttime. So Hashta Tumah Yedua Huchulo Mada, if it's a Vadai Tumah, that it's a known to us, and nevertheless you can bring the Korban Pesach on his behalf. Tumas Atoim Lekol Shekain. So certainly by a Tumas Atoim, then certainly you can bring it on his behalf. So it can't be referring to the Baalim, because then why would it say that it's only Tumas Meis and Lo Yamru Tumas Hatam or Tumas Meis? Well, it's not relevant to a Sheretz for the Baalim, because in any event you can bring the Korban on his behalf if he's Tomei Tumas Sheretz. Even if it's a Vadai Tumas Sheretz, you can bring it on his behalf, certainly if it's a Tumas Tahim. So what is the case we're talking about? Elo, you must say Bekayin. It must be Elolav, it's Bekayin. It must be talking about the Kayin became Tomei with a Tumas Tahim of Sheretz. And therefore, you might have said, therefore, we should allow it. Mashmalan, no, only by Mace, not B'Sheretz. Don't you see from here that we are mata the Tumas Time, not only for the Baalim, but even for the Kayin. The Gemara says, no, it's not a raya. Amar of Yosef, lo elam b'Baalim, really, I'll tell you, it's talking about the Baalim. Over Pesach, and it's talking about a Korban Pesach, but Olimute Tumas Atahim Deziva. It's not talking about a Sheretz, it's talking about where the Baalim became Tomei. It was Tomei with the Tumas of Ziva, Tumas Tahim. It was not known at the time. And it's telling you that that Tumah we will not allow it, that's not mata the Korban Pesach, Tumas Tahim Deziva, only the Meis. Well, on the next Talmud, analyze this halacha of Tumas Tahim Deziva.